Today we're going to dive back into the book bag and talk about why we read the books we do. Let's go. Excuse me, guys. Welcome back to the show. I'm Rob. That's my mom, Karen. This is Books, Banter, and Beyond, the show that talks all about books, literature, and beyond.
And beyond.
So if you guys saw our last week's show, we introduced something called the book bag, where we talk about a few little general topics. And we're going to jump back in today. And today's theme is, why do we read what we do? Why do you think we read what we do, Mom?
That's such a great question, because I ask that question of myself every day when I can't figure out what I want to read.
Or why I'm doing this. And I'm like, why the hell am I enjoying this so much? This is
right.
Not right.
Exactly.
All right. So we have a couple questions to go over for this topic. And the first one is, I love this one. I had to do this one. Does the title fit the book? My answer is no. So we're talking strictly fiction here, because obviously a nonfiction book, like the study of whatever, that's obviously what the book's about. So we're not talking about nonfiction, because those titles are literally what the book is about, right? There's so many books, though, where there's, I don't know, random titles. Off the top of my head, The Shining, for instance. If you didn't know what The Shining was, it sounded like a book about light. Because to me, the word shining means the sun, right? It's definitely not, because it's a horror book. Books like The Hobbit, for instance. It sounds like it's literally a book about hobbits, which it is, but there's more, to it, right? So why do you think a person picks the titles they do? Or do you think it's just kind of like, hey, this sounds cool, let's name it this?
I'm going to switch it on you, Rob. I mean, when people decide what the titles of their books are going to be, there's a thought process that goes behind that. And that is, I need to have a title that when somebody reads it, they're going to immediately say, oh, that looks interesting, or I need to open up and see maybe an introduction or something. And that's what we call in marketing. It needs to be search engine optimized. That means somebody's actually looking for the book that somebody has actually written. And so when you say, why does somebody actually want to read that book when they see a title? Because it obviously, to me, sets off something in their brain that says, oh, that sounds interesting. Now, to your point, The Shining may not, tell me exactly what I think it is, but I also know who wrote it. And so I might not necessarily, right? I can see it's Stephen King. I'm not going to think it's about sunshine, literally, because it's Stephen King. So I think when you look at a cover, we also have to look at the author. So if it's a favorite author, so we kind of know where their head is. That would be my opinion.
All right. I'm going to go a little farther back to, the classics and kind of say that it's a difference in the marketing.
Right.
Back in the day, you had, let's say, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, right, by Lewis Carroll. That was a very obvious title, because we know who Alice is. We know what Wonderland is. She's having adventures in Wonderland.
Right.
Perfectly fine. Dickens, Christmas Carol. Basically a story over Christmas, kind of the followings of that. Now, that one actually is a little misnomer as well, because you find out that the guy is going through the ghosts of Christmas past.
Right.
But generally speaking, it makes sense. Let's see. We have
Jaws. We know
Jaws. Generally makes sense. Of course, there's also a shark on the cover, I believe, so you get it. So back then, marketing was literally, I'm going to write you a book and give you the exact information so you don't have to second guess. And if you don't want to read it, pick the book next to it. That's fine. Now, it's, what can I do to make you interested? What can I do to make it colorful? Now, there's things like, for instance, in Japan, we have manga, which is the anime, the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, I have a bunch back here. All it is it's the pictures of the characters, and it's you read it backwards, which is really fun. And that's what they do, because Japanese book and media is known to be colorful and flashy. So they don't have a problem selling, because that's their style. In America, however, it's not the case. It's usually a black or a white cover, not necessarily pictures on the front. It's just kind of a title screen. And it just kind of, you go, what is this? And to your point of what you're saying, if the title is intriguing enough, I'll flip it open, I'll read the synopsis, and then if I like it, I'll do it. If not, I'll put it back and go to the next.
Well,
But I think it's a change in the time frame.
right, but and I think about I used to read back in the day romance novels, and it would be like it'd be historical, but not really historical. And on the cover
Okay.
would be a good-looking guy with long flowing hair, and a good-looking woman with long flowing hair, right? Which is funny, but you knew it was going to be a romance. It was going to be some knight in shining armor that didn't start out as a knight in shining armor with the damsel in distress and the two of them and there's a formula, right? But you would know it didn't even matter what the title was. I don't think it even mattered what the title
Well, I
was.
was going to say, because generally a category like romance,
Right.
I was going to ask you, do you think it's just obvious no matter what, because you can tell from either the word or the picture,
The
it's
picture.
automatically a love story?
I
Like,
actually think it's the picture, and it's the damsel in distress being rescued by the hero. I mean, it's that kind of thing in the story, the journey that they went on to meet, and then finally they fell in love, and the rest is history, so to speak. But that's because of the picture, I think, because I can't remember a single title of any single book that I read, literally, during that genre. But I knew I can picture. In fact, there was a guy that became famous as being the model, Fabio. Fabio,
oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah,
he
okay.
had the long, long, streaming dark, and he was on the cover. They literally, and so you knew it was going to be one of those kind of stories, right?
Now, it's funny you say that, because one that I'm going to read that we're going to actually talk about in a future show, a faux love story, takes the dynamic of Romeo and Juliet, but actually has it be two warring restaurants. And the children of the parents of the restaurants, end up, it's the love story like Romeo and Juliet. But looking at the title, I kind of already could tell. It's called a faux love story. People have probably read it. It's a very popular book right now. So I kind of could already tell, but I had to look in the synopsis, and I read it, and I started going through, and I was like, this is a really interesting idea for a book, because as much as Shakespeare is kind of whatever, it's a very good take on the new stuff. And it makes me think what you're talking about, how the old romance titles are being transferred into new ones.
Right,
And I think it's Jojo Myers or something did Back to You. They all become love story movies,
right.
but all of their books, again, there's not necessarily a photo, but the hearts and the flowers and all the stuff on
Branded.
the
It's
front,
the way it's branded. It's
you
all
know that it's
right,
a love story.
right,
No questions asked. You don't have to think
right.
about it.
And I think those authors who write books like this know their market, and they know exactly how to do this. They probably spit these books out rather rapidly because it's formulaic. It's got the hero, the heroine. It's got this is what happened. This is how, and it just happens. And so if you like those kind of stories, or if you're a mystery writer, like I don't know what it was, the something 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 B. So it's literally, and you would do the alphabet.
Oh, that's Grafton, I think. It was Sue Grafton, I
Sue
believe.
Grafton, correct. Sue Grafton, who unfortunately has passed away, and I loved her books. I don't remember the titles, but what I remember is it was the alphabet. See, now I actually remember that she did a thing with the alphabet so that I always knew what book I was on next, which was a good thing. But did I know what the book was going to be about? No. I just knew that it was the
I
next.
don't think you necessarily needed to, because I think you already had an idea. And it goes back to, we talked about Agatha Christie before. Literally, one of them is The Murder on the Orient Express, plain and simple.
Yeah.
But again, she also wrote back in the classic times. So her titles were
Right.
legitimate. I think one of them was The Body in the Library.
Right.
There was All Hallows Eve, and it was a Halloween mystery.
Right.
She didn't make any guesses. She just said, here, this is a
what
book
it
about
is.
people on a train, and somebody happened, and this is what's going on. Is that good or bad? I don't know. For me, it's less thought process. So if I do come across her title, I go, okay, I know that I've read it. I can go do another one.
Right.
I don't necessarily like when it's a random title and I have to sit there and think about it, because sometimes you even open the book and you're like, the synopsis doesn't make any sense to the title. So I'm even more confused than I was when I read the thing.
And did I even read this already? Anyways.
Right.
So,
yeah. So there's a lot of, and I think it's culture. I think it's timeline, and I think it's the author to it. Hemingway wrote his stuff, but you knew it was about Edgar Allan Poe when he wrote his poetry. There was no rhyme or reason other than he wrote a story. This is what it's called. Take it or leave it. If you don't like it, whatever. I'm writing another one. That's how it is. That's what writing was. And I think we've somewhat lost it depending on who the author is. But I think today it's really more of a marketing thing. If you know you're popular, you're gonna your title is going to work
Right.
even if it doesn't work.
Or it's
I
going
don't
to
know.
say former, writer of a former bestseller on the New York
Right.
Times.
Yeah.
Or if it's an author that you follow, the most important thing on that book to me is their name, so that I know it's one of their books. So this leads me, I think, to ask the next question: Is it, do you tend to read all the books in a series from an author?
Oh God, yeah, another wonderful question, right? It's funny because I asked this to people too, and they automatically said no. They're like, nope, nope, nah, I'm not doing that. Um, I don't think I can find an author, even one that I like, that I'm going to read all the books. I mean, I can tell you I've read many books by people, more so for for work here or for school. It wasn't necessarily because I wanted to; it was more because it was part of the assignment or for the
Right.
story.
Right.
Um, I think, like I said, we were talking about Stephen King a couple weeks ago for our horror one. He wrote a new one called Fairy Tale, and it's about a dragon and a castle and knights, and he does a whole fantasy thing. I don't really want to read it, and again, it's nothing against King. I don't feel like he's a fantasy writer, and I don't really want to read his
So you don't
fantasy.
want to give them a chance. You don't want to
I
actually.
mean, if I really need something to read and I'll do it, maybe I'll listen to the audiobook and I'll get a few chapters in. I'll see if it's good. I'm sure it's a great story. I mean, he's a great author. He can write well. I'm sure it's a good story. I just really have no desire to check it out, and that goes for a lot of people that I've read before. There's a lot of Lovecraft that I don't read because it's not it kind of goes off the rail. There's a lot of Christie that we just talked about that I can care less.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And there are some books, though, some series of books that I think they do a really good job of actually introducing the next book at the very end of
I
the
mean, yeah,
which literally says, "Oh, I'm really sad this book has ended, but oh, thank goodness there's another one that's coming that already's got my attention." How do you feel about that? Do you like that to be
I mean, like for instance, I know people that read the Harry Potter books over and over again, and they've read them probably 5 or 6 times each. Same thing, Lord of the Rings. It's not so much that it's the best thing ever there. I think it also has to do with maybe the comfort of yourself and what you enjoy and what you read as a kid.
Mhm.
I think it kind of goes back to, hey, if I'm waiting for a book to come in the library and I need something to read, let me go back and reread this again because I don't necessarily have to pay so much attention. I already know what happens, but it's still fun to read. And I think some authors get off the hook because their story lasts so long
Mhm.
that it doesn't necessarily have to keep being good. It just has to be good the first time. And
Right. Yeah. So what factors actually influence you when you decide I'm going to pick a new book to read, or I'm going to explore it more what this author did, or how do you make that decision?
I mean, I think it really has to go with what I like them do in the past. And I guess in a way, I do have to read their bad stuff, in my opinion,
Mm,
to make that decision.
mm,
For instance, let's go to King again. Misery, one of his best books. They made the movie with Kathy Bates and James Caan.
mhm.
It's literally a book about a writer being kidnapped by another writer who wants to be written about. And it's a very weird story. Everybody loves it. People think it's one of his best stories. I don't think it's one of his best books, personally. It is one of his best books. If you look down his thing, it's one of the top selling books. But I read it to kind of see what it was like to read a book that wasn't strictly a scary story
Mm.
from the point of horror. Obviously, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. I mean, she kidnaps the dude. That's horror in itself. Um, but I think in order to make my decision whether or not I'm going to read more by that, or even go on to the next person, is what did I read before? What are they writing now? Does it mesh together? If it meshes slightly, I'll give it a couple chapters. If it doesn't mesh at all, I may go back to it, but it's not going to be my first.
Do you prefer reading books or an author that has a series where there's a bunch of books that are kind of wrapped around the same character versus authors that are and I don't even know if I are there authors that simply just write books that are very interesting and then they talk about a totally different kind of book, or generally our authors do what they do best and you
That's a good, quick question. I think nowadays people are trying to do that more, and they're trying to write more outside their comfort level, I guess. Um, but actually, do answer the do I like this the series thing? Not necessarily. I mean, there are many times where I read the first few books of a series and then I just want the characters to be killed off and never have to see them again because it's that bad of a thing. I think, I do like the one offs, which are kind of rare. You have to go back to the 80s to get a one off book.
Yeah, yeah.
The cozy mysteries that I read, where it follows the same main character, but it's a different mystery each time. I like that because it's quick, it's easy. Yeah, it's the same person. Sometimes I go, okay, God, this person's annoying me. Give me a new character. But the book is quick enough that I don't mind reading the same person.
Get in really quickly because you're not even having to do character development and learning.
Exactly. And usually by book 5 or 6, the first chapter goes right into the mystery because you don't have to worry about all the introductions because you've already met them.
Right.
So it's some of them are good series, some of them are not. It depends. I really gravitate towards older because I think the formula for writing has drastically changed. And I think it's dropped a little bit just because they're trying to make money to put more books, in my opinion. Whereas past, people wrote because they loved it. Like that, they're literally, they sat there by candlelight every day writing. That was their thing.
Do you think that also part of it is the rise of self-publishers versus traditional
True.
publishing? A whole lot more self-publishing out there because most writers don't have. It's not who it is who you know in many respects in terms of even getting your book in front of a traditional publicist,
Right.
publisher rather, and therefore a lot of people are doing their own publishing, self-publishing, and hoping for the best and crossing their fingers and making #1 on Amazon, which means Zippo, but it's a goal, I guess. It's a goal.
Hey, more power to them. I personally can't. I've tried reading a few. Again, maybe it's just not my cup of tea, but I can't do it. It also, the books look like they were printed off of like Photoshop and the cover. And again, I get it. Self-publishing, you're doing it cheaper. I understand whatever, but yeah, it's a good question. I mean, again, I hate to sound like I'm putting these people down because they're not bad at what they're doing. I'm sure. It's just when you're, and again, people who know me know that I studied literature in school. So I did creative writing, I did literature, whatever. So I kind of unfortunately have a level of, I don't know, expectation where if you don't cut it, it's not my thing. And I don't want to sound rude, but it just
No. And then roll into that artificial intelligence, where we have people that are literally writing books in Chat GPT. They are saying, okay, here's my idea. Write me a 1,300 word book with 10 chapters. And each chapter will talk about this concept that I have. And now they have a book that is not a real book.
I mean, it may be good, but it's not really writing. It's, which could be a whole topic for another bag. But,
so we want to encourage people to go stop by the store. You've got some great things going on over there. Paperbacks and hardbounds and comic books and, of course, merchandise. We were wearing our T-shirts, and the way to get there, the fastest way to get there is take your phone out right now and scan those codes. If you happen to be watching the show on your phone, don't worry about that. Look in the comments, and you will see the links there as well. And this is what I meant on our really cool T-shirts that we're wearing. Yep. We have those in the store, guys, different colors and other things that are branded to Books, Banter, and beyond. Wow.
I ranted. I did not mean to rant. I apologize, people.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So, Rob, any last thoughts, or are we going to say goodbye and see everyone next week?
I think we will say goodbye and what is it? Say goodbye, Gracie, or something? I don't know.
Gracie. Or no,
there you go. Yeah, so we'll be back next week, everybody.
All right. Have a good one. Bye.